What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I'm your host, Paul O'Neid, and coming off of a 2-week layoff, recording podcasts to the point where I actually started it off in a new way. As usual, we are sponsored by X Factor Labs for all of your peptides, next level strength for all of your equipment, wraps, knee sleeves, and apparel. We're also sponsored by TC Nutrition and Barefoot Shoes. I'm joined by my coach, great friend of mine, Cody Miller. Cody's been on the podcast before. He is the co-owner of Hoopie Strength, and he's been helping me in this new endeavor, getting into the tactical games. And I wanted to have Cody on, not to talk about my training in specific, but talk about something that has become much more prevalent in we'll call it the fitness sphere, which is hybrid training. And I think Cody, more than anyone, being in the tactical strength and conditioning space, having competed in powerlifting at a very high level, having also completed ultra marathons, and being honestly one of the smartest human beings I know, would be probably the best person to come on and talk about it. So Cody, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Paul. As always, a pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure. So the first thing that I want to get into is, not necessarily on the hybrid training side of things, but more so on the mental side of things, because one of the things that I've noticed as someone who identifies as a person who does hard things is there are different levels of difficulty, whether it's something that is physically arduous, like squatting 800 pounds or running 100 miles. But those things also come with a mental difficulty as well.
Sure.
Talk to me a little bit about your philosophy on quote unquote doing hard things and how that relates to the different aspects of physical fitness.
Yeah. So I think that doing hard things is one thing that I think about all the time, is that it has to be incremental. And that I usually use the analogy that, if you're like 8 years old, your parents tell you to take out the garbage. Like, that's pretty hard. Because you don't want to do that.
It's still hard for us now, let's be honest.
It's hard. But you can't stay there, right? You can't stay in that space where taking out the garbage is hard.
Yeah.
You have to look for incremental challenges and incrementally harder things. And what you'll find is that if you do incrementally challenge yourself, you, just like a physical adaptation, you get better at doing hard things. And there's some like brain stuff that goes on, which I won't get into because honestly,
you don't want to talk about the mid-cingulate cortex?
The anterolateral medulla cingulate. All these words that I don't really understand, but I just know that if you constantly challenge yourself and are constantly experiencing mastery experiences, what Bandura would call mastery experiences, you're constantly winning. You're facing overcoming them.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get better at overcoming challenges. One thing that I like to think about, one book that really changed my thinking on a lot of things, was Thinking in Systems. And one of the traps, what they call a trap in the thinking systems, is like winning begets winning. And winning is a positive feedback system. And that the more you win, the more likely you're to win. Because you not only get the experience of winning, but you get all of the positive things from winning. So you get extra increased ability. And so that sets you up for an opportunity to win in the future as well. And that's what I think of whenever I think about doing hard things, is you have to find that sweet spot of easy, not too hard, right in the middle, sweet spot, and attack those challenges that are difficult yet achievable. And another thing that this makes me think about is optimal failure rates. Is, they say machine learning, it's 15% failure rate is optimal. And all this really says to me is that a challenge, a good challenge, I'm going to fail, 1 out of every 10 times, or 1 out of every 8 times, or 1 out of every 9 times. But I'm going to have enough winning that I engage in that positive feedback system of winning. Right? I'm going to win so much that I'm going to gain the ability to win in the future. But it's not so much winning. It's not winning all the time, and then it's not a challenge. It's still a challenge to win, and I'm going to win most of the time. But there are instances where I'm going to lose and I'm going to fail.
Yeah. One of the things that I say very frequently to my clients, and I've said on the podcast a number of times, is like, the hardest thing you've ever done is the hardest thing you've ever done. And that becomes almost like an anchor to the other challenges that you face in your life. And it also brings into the thought that difficulty is relative, and it's going to be relative to that hardest thing. Like, when I tore my quads, physically, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Mentally, it wasn't the hardest thing I've ever done. And as we engage in these different activities, we start to formulate almost like this lattice of cognitive associations with, quote unquote, the hardest thing we've ever done. It's something that I think about a lot because I'm always searching for that next hard thing. And I feel like there's almost two types of people. They're the types of people that if they encounter failure, they assume that it's final. Or there's the types of people that encounter failure and it motivates them to continue to push. Like you programmed a 20-minute run for me this morning, which is 12 minutes longer than I've ever run. Well, ever that I've run continuously in probably the last 15 years. I could have looked at that and been like, this guy's fucking nuts. But I looked at that as a challenge. And as I was running, I was thinking, well, Cody said I should probably get close to 2 miles. So fuck that guy. I'm getting over 2 miles. But that's my mentality. And I know that a lot of people are not born with that sort of mentality. What's your take on that kind of duality between failure being final or failure being a motivator?
Going back to Bandura and this idea of self-efficacy, I think that's key to it. And that's something I focus on a lot in just training. And the self-efficacy is the belief, and definitionally, it is the belief that you have the capacity to overcome challenges and overcome obstacles in the future. Right? If you don't have any winning experiences and you don't have a lot of self-efficacy, you haven't done a lot of stuff, right? You've done a lot of things where you have competed in powerlifting at a high level. You've created a business from nothing. So you have all of these experiences that aren't necessarily specific to running, but you have all of this evidence that when you apply yourself to something,
right,
that you just do it. You can overcome that obstacle. And so what it really comes back to, if you just peel back the layers, if you don't do anything, you'll never build the belief that you can do things and overcome challenges.
Yeah.
And that's what it really comes down to is, and I try to tell people all the time, just start doing stuff. You just need to doing things and stop thinking about things and start doing things, because you can think about something until the cows come home. And that's just not going to build the belief. It's not going to build self-efficacy, which that takes years. That's years and years and years and years and years. And there is some transfer to that context of your powerlifting and you're building a business and you're doing all of these things and having success in a lot of different arenas, where you look at running and you're like, wow, a lot of unknowns here. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen. Whenever I don't know, can I run for a minute? Can I run for 2 minutes like right now? But I believe that in the future, I can do all the things necessary to overcome these challenges and these obstacles and to get where I want to go, because that's all I've done in the past is just succeed. And so you feel like a runaway train, really.
Yeah. It's what you're saying is so true, especially when I talk to coaches about like their businesses and they want to make everything perfect and they want to do all these things in this optimal fashion. And same goes for training, same goes for nutrition. It's like, what's the best way to do this? How do you know? You've never done it. You've never done it. So you have zero evidence of what you enjoy, what works for you, what you're actually going to stick to consistently. And when it comes to business, there's so many quotes about like inaction kills more dreams than failure ever did. And that's what I come back to. Like, I would much rather be making mistakes at 100 miles an hour than to be sitting there consumed by overthinking of what might happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's that like anxiety and like forward thinking. The other thing that I've been loving about your content lately is how you've been focusing a lot on what's possible. You made a post recently that I kind of spun off into something else in my story. Was you said, hey, how many 1 mile repeats could you do at your 5K pace? Are you afraid to find out? And that got me thinking a lot about, how many reps could you do at 500? Are you scared to do that AMRAP? How many, where does that fit into things like pushing limits? How does that fit into this conversation of doing hard things?
I think Socrates said, know thyself.
Mm.
And training as a whole, I think, is a form of both self-creation and self-discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is kind of primal in the entire training process. Is you have to, and that's like one of the joys too, is you get to find out what you're really made of. And that sounds cliche, but it's
But
true.
it's so true. It's so true.
So true. You really don't know. And you don't know what, and this is just apart from training, but, when bad things happen, you could say, I would do this or I would do this, but you don't know until it actually happens. And that's why I think what's coming around now in terms of social media, in terms of content, is there is a growing undercurrent of people who want real, authentic experience from people that have done things and the rubber has met the road, and they've gone through things, and people want those experiences. I think they don't want to live on social media. This is maybe a kind of a sidebar, but they want to be able to do things and actually, enact things in real life. And I think partially we are afraid to find the limit. We are afraid to find out what we can actually do, because I think some people are afraid of, maybe I don't have it, or maybe I don't, I can't quite measure up to so and so. But I think that is a big part of training that maybe the biggest part of training that I enjoy, is it's just, you get to find out who you are and you get to create who you are.
Yes.
So yeah, it really is. I mean, the only thing that's real, what else is there besides, when your marriage is on the rocks, or your business is not doing well, or training's not doing well. Like, how are you going to respond? Like, things aren't going to go great. That's when you find out whether you're a dog or not, is whether, anyone can do really great things when things are going well, and, training's going well, your family's healthy. But when you lose your health, when you lose your wealth, when, things aren't going well, like, are you just going to wither away and, go away?
Training's always been that one thing for me. And I mean, this is probably getting a little bit too philosophical for the audience, but I mean, training's always been that one thing where there's a direct return on investment. The harder I work, the better I get, plain and simple. And yeah, there's a limit to that, but finding those limits is really exciting to me. And that's part of the reason why I've kind of ventured in this new direction, is I cannot push. So if you consider pushing your total as the hardest thing you've ever done, right?
Yeah.
Squatting 800 for the first time, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. But then I did it 14 more times. Then it was, okay, squatting 805, squatting 850 in the gym. Like all of these things were the hardest thing I've ever done. I can no longer pursue challenge in that same manner. So how can I manufacture hardship within the training process in a way that is novel to me and creates a new runway of progression? Enter running, enter aerobic fitness, because that's something that I can push to new limits and to new heights. And man, like it gives me similar butterflies to look at the program that you write and be like, can I do this? And that's quickly into, well, let's fucking find out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you need a little bit of, you need a healthy amount of fear. I think you need a little bit to build like zero anxiety in training is not good to me. I need a little bit because it raises my awareness and it raises my, like my acuity, my attention, and like I just get into a more aroused state.
Yeah.
So it can't be too relaxed, especially in like training sessions that matter. If it doesn't matter, it doesn't scare me, then whatever. But training that actually pushes the envelope, I'm going to have a little bit of anxiety, maybe a little paranoia, but not so much that it stops me.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Funny enough, this was like, sorry to interrupt, but like this was like the exact thing that I didn't know if I would like about bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. Because there is no fear of, like, literally if you're powerlifting at a high level, you fear death. Like I'm not going to hurt myself doing a leg press.
Right.
I'm not going to end my life doing a set of bicep curls. Mm-hmm. So then it became the diet process was the fear, because that's where, that came in. And I just like, you fall in love with it. Mm-hmm. Eventually you fall, like, if everyone who I've coached who didn't necessarily want to compete or want to push limits, they just wanted to pursue fitness, they all end up wanting to compete at something or wanting to set a goal to do a thing, mm-hmm. whether it's, a formal competition or not. It's like, okay, well, we got into powerlifting, like, let's see, or we got into strength training. Let's see how much I can squat at some point, or how much I can deadlift at some point, or, maybe I'll do a fun high rocks competition or something along those lines to test yourself. That becomes addicting to people.
Yeah. What this makes, I just had a thought, and I actually lost his name. It was Fred something or other. But anyways, he developed the concept called Maya, MAYA, which is basically how we like iterate car models or car years.
Okay.
So the car kind of looks like the same car, but it's slightly different. Mm-hmm. And Maya means most advanced yet acceptable. And
so, I like that.
It's a little different, but it's not. If it's very different, mm-hmm. you're gonna like take the Tesla Cybertruck for example. Very polarizing. A lot of people hate it. Like, so
it looks like Lego.
Yeah, it doesn't quite look like a truck, but that's an example of too far. Whereas if you just have a slightly different model of the Mustang, like they're like, "Ooh, that's a little different. That's kind of cool. I want to buy that." So this concept of what I thought of recently was like most scary yet acceptable. Like, what is a challenge that it scares me if I think of something that I have never done before, and I think, "Ooh, scary," but I could probably do that. Like, I think it's within the realm of challenge that I can accomplish. If for me, it was running like 200 miles or something, I'd be like, okay, maybe a little bit too far out right now, maybe in the future. But running 100 miles for me, I was like, that's really scary, but I think that I could do that. Like, I think I could squeak it out somehow. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. So I think that concept of whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's this running, it's like, what is most scary yet acceptable? yet I can overcome that fear and go for it. Because if it's too scary, too much fear, then it's inhibiting.
Is that kind of what played into your Project Heracles? Tell people what that is, because I think that's pretty cool.
So Project Heracles is my attempt to ruck a sub 2 hour 12 mile, which is common in the tactical spaces. Kind of a standard, kind of elite level of ruck is depending on where you go, 35, 40, 45 pounds for the ruck, and then you do that for 12 miles under 2 hours, so it's a 10-minute per mile pace,
Mm-hmm.
and then simultaneously be able to pull 600 pounds. And this just kind of goes into the hybrid idea, is
Okay.
that there's a trade-off between endurance and strength.
Yep.
Uh, and the concept, and I know we've talked about this before, that most aptly illustrates this is FFMI, where the kind of like the optimal or the average FFMI for really, really strong people is like 26, 27, 28, whatever. It's an index of muscle mass per height.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you look at elite marathoners, they're like 17, 16,
Yep.
down there in the teens. And so from the morphology standpoint, it is very difficult to be elite at both endurance and strength training. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's actually impossible to be elite at both, because they need different morphologies. You need to have a different amount of muscle mass per your frame. But where is the point at which I can try to push both of those things up as high as possible and get basically, wring out every bit of potential I have to manage that trade off?
Mm.
Where is the point where I can precisely balance that trade off? And, I'm not going to lie to you. I chose two things that I thought I could be successful at, which I think through my life, I've always kind of done that. I don't know if that's just what people do, but I don't really like doing things that I'm bad at or that I think that I'll be bad at. So, uh, so I chose two things that I thought would be a good challenge and would be difficult, but I thought that I could be good at, and also illustrate the balance between endurance and strength. So that's the project. And I'm shooting to do both of those sometime in January, I think.
Dude, running with a ruck is so awkward.
Yeah.
Because I'm just got into rucking, and you've seen the metrics that I've had, and I've been doing a 50-pound ruck, and it's been, I think I started off at like 17-minute miles, and it
Mhm.
was pushing my heart rate up like crazy. And then this past one, I was under 15 or at 15 for almost 4 miles in an hour. And it's really cool. Like, just to be able to, yeah. When you posted it, I was like, oh, I think he can totally do that today.
Yeah.
But the fact that this is another concept too. So say you said, okay, I'm going to do this in January.
Mhm.
What's stopping you from just taking 2 days off training and going to do it? Because you pulled 5:15 for 5.
Yeah.
You've done well. I think you did 9 miles in like a couple, like
Yeah.
an hour and a
I,
half.
I did. I've done like an aggregate. I did an interval where it was 6 miles, and it was like at a 9:25 or 9:35 pace or something like that. I did 4 miles continuous the other day, and it was like 9:25, and not that hard. Um, so to answer your question, there's absolutely nothing stopping me from doing it right now, I think. But what I'll say to this is that I enjoy the process right now, and I enjoy
Mm-hmm.
the training. It's fun. It's
Yep.
fun to also lay out exactly what I'm doing, and I plan to share that.
Right.
I want to build out this plan and be like, hey, I did this, a 600-pound deadlift and a sub 2 hour ruck. Do you want to do this? Here you go. This is what I did. And just basically lay out here's a story for you, you
Yep.
know, and this is what I did. This is exactly what I did. And so if you want to build your ruck and your deadlift at the same time, as you know, or just strength training in general,
Mm-hmm.
here's a very simple way you can do it. And this is how I did it. But yeah, a lot of it is too, is that I keep getting better in my, I'm keep stretching this out longer and longer. And it's almost like I don't want it to end. Kind of like your first date, or, you know, your
Yep.
early dating phase. It's like, oh man, this is so cool. Like I keep getting better. Like I wish this would just never end.
Part
So just trying to keep it going as long as I can.
I'm sure part of it is also like, okay, when I do decide to do it, I'm just going to blow these numbers out of the
Yeah.
water.
That's another thing too, is that I have a number in my mind. But I think that I could go even bigger.
I think so too.
So yeah, a lot of it is that I'm just really enjoying it. And, you know, once I kind of realized I didn't, like I said, like you said, I realized I probably don't need as much training and much of a build up to this as I thought I would, but I'm just having so much fun. Right? It's so cool.
So this leads into the conversation of hybrid athlete. And I honestly think that High Rocks had a lot to do with this, like bringing it to the forefront of like an athlete who is both very aerobically fit and then also physically capable. Um, you know, the events in High Rocks, from a strength perspective, relatively light. Like they're not going to blow you up. But if you're familiar with like high level High Rocks, they're basically sprinting for an hour.
Yep.
You know, like
Very
they're
fast.
running a kilometer very, very fast, and then performing these, you know, whether it's the row or the ski or the farmer walk. Like I saw a girl doing the farmer walk, and she was basically running with those, you know, I think they're 70-pound kettlebells.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So you're basically running at max heart rate or lactate threshold for an hour.
And you have to,
Yeah.
because that's where the time is, you're able to make up time, because the ski erg, like the sled somewhat, the kettlebell kind of, but all that stuff is kind of like the burpee broad jump. You can shave a little bit of time, but you can shave a lot of time off of a 5 mile run. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you are a 36, 38 mile or 38 minute 5 miler versus someone who like is burning it down at like 26, 27,
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes it world class, is that on the run you can save so much time. And so that's what you see, is you see runners who are sufficient at the lifting portion.
Yeah. So when we're talking about hybrid athletics, you've mentioned the trade-off. You mentioned FFMI or fat-free mass index. What are some other considerations that come into play? I don't want to use me as a case study, but I think I'm coming from one way far end of the spectrum where I was elite at a strength sport, and then I'm coming into something that's completely an opposite adaptation. We're probably mostly dealing, and I want this to be actionable for some of the coaches out there, is like, you know, you get someone who comes in the door, maybe has a reasonable level of fitness, has some exposure to running, some exposure to lifting. What are some of the considerations that need to be made when planning out how to prepare this person to be maybe not elite at both running and lifting, but passable?
Okay. So getting good at both of those things. FFMI is one of them. So that gives you kind of a starting point, but also percentage body fat
Mm.
from a body composition standpoint. So if someone is coming in and they are, if you're a male and you're 25% body fat,
Right.
like one of the first things we can do to get you better at running
Mm.
is just get you leaner. You will, for every, roughly speaking, for every 1% of body weight. Now, don't go out and just, this is a problem with endurance athletes in general, is they just try to lose weight. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not good. So disclaimer, you know, if you're already lean, don't do this. But for about every percentage of just body weight in general that you lose, you gain about a percentage of increase in running ability or VO2 max or whatever metric you want. But it's about a 1-to-1, 1% loss of body weight, 1% gain in running ability.
Mm-hmm.
So just getting you down into a range that we would consider to be a workable range, and then we can kind of figure it out from there, is like 12 to 16%.
Okay.
That is kind of the starting point of, if you get down to 12 to 16%, we'll see how you feel. If you feel good, you can go down lower. But basically, from what we've seen, until you get very, very low in body fat, there's not much of a upper limit on performance.
Mm-hmm.
As you keep losing body fat, you keep getting faster. Okay. Once you get down, like if you get under 6% or something like that, I'm sure there's going to be negative.
Just the energy availability just won't be there for recovery.
Yeah. So, but I mean, how many people are walking around, at 6 or 5%? Not many. So you're going to have, maybe an outlier here or there. But for the most people, if you get down to 12 to 16% body fat, now we're in a workable range where we can focus more on just running and the programming of running, rather than just, let's lift and do some running, do some calorie kind of management, and get you down in body weight. Once we do that, and while we're doing that, we could also do a run profile if someone has enough running experience. If they don't have enough running experience, they need what we did with you, which was just slowly and gradually build your capacity to run by just adding time at no certain pace. So if you start with 2 days of running, which I think is a good place to start with someone who has little to no running ability, you start with 2 days and you start with just a few minutes. I mean, they're going to be sore from just a few minutes of running.
Can confirm, yes.
Can confirm. And then what you can do is you can just extend that out a little bit and then add sessions. So I think a good goal is, running 10 to 15, 20 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. Mm-hmm. Once you hit that, then you're in a good place to start to differentiate. So you can go, one day is a little longer. So now I'm stretching one of these days out to 30 minutes or 40 minutes. And then an in-between day, you've got 15 or 20 minutes. So in the beginning, the running is more uniform, where every day is kind of the same. Similar, if you were to do training with someone, you may have one training like lifting day, and you can just repeat it like 2 or 3 times a week.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They'll still get
or alternate an A session and a B session and go every other day.
Yeah. And I mean, you can do almost the same thing, and it'd be very kind of like orderly and uniform throughout the week, and they'll still get better. It's only after they gain some competence that you need to differentiate and be like, this is a heavier day, this is a lighter day, this is, hypertrophy, this is strength. So they start to get different rather than being the same. So you can do the same thing with running. Once someone is at the point where they have a sufficient enough base that they can run, I would say for 3 hours a week. You're doing a 45 or a 50-minute, a 60-minute session with a shakeout, with another 60-minute run, with another shorter run. By that point, and you could do this before too, but I think that's just a good standard heuristic to base it off of. Then you would start to make things go faster. You would build off of whatever pace they're running at and just try to make it a little bit faster. I wouldn't go too crazy and do sprints or anything like that. What we want to do is slowly introduce greater forces. So now we're thinking about not just, is the lower leg conditioned, is the ankle conditioned, the foot conditioned, but now can they produce greater and greater forces, greater and greater ground reaction forces with the increased velocity of running. So that's really something that you just slowly and incrementally increase over time. It's like you're doing an interval, and you can do it relatively short, and you can just say, hey, run faster than what your slow pace usually is. For you, if If you're running like a 9:30 or 10, I would say, all right, let's go out. Let's hit a 9 or an 8:30. Let's just do it for 2 minutes, 3 minutes maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll rest and then we'll do it again. And over time, that'll get easier and easier. You'll be able to produce forces more efficiently. And we can continue that process with either stretching that effort out or continue to intensify, where now I'm saying, okay, let's just make it faster. Let's go to 8 minutes or let's go to 7:30. And so you're just gradually increasing the amount of force that they have to produce to run. And you're getting that lower leg, the calf, like we've talked about, a majority of the force in running, sprinting is produced by the calf, the gastroc and soleus. So that really becomes kind of a linchpin in running, is how strong and really how elastic. If
Mm.
you really want to get back to what it actually is that you have to create uh, a really aggressive isometric contraction with that lower leg when it meets the ground. And this is what we call a distal stability strategy, is that the stability from running, it's
Mm-hmm.
almost all coming from that ankle foot complex and all the things that are up and downstream from it.
Mm-hmm.
So that, especially whenever you're a little bit bigger, like 220-ish,
Yeah.
you have to be a little bit more careful, because with any amount of increase or decrease in speed or increase or decrease in volume, you have an exponential effect because they're carrying a lot more weight than your average person. So every sort of average recommendation that you have out there for running will probably, apply to, I don't know what the average weight is, 185, 190-pound male and 140, 150-pound female or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're dealing with someone who's a lot heavier, you're going to have a different response. So that would be just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's one thing that I noticed for sure, is that the lower leg endurance was just not there. And it was to the point where I couldn't even run fast enough to get my heart rate up,
Mm-hmm.
or run long enough to get my heart rate up, because my lower leg was just so blown up. Um, it's really interesting to me too, because what you're talking about, when we look at strength training, I don't want a fat power lifter.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want my guys and girls to be as muscular as possible within the body weight range, or within the, the body weight classification that they compete at. So, for me, when you're talking about FFMI, I was coming to you off of a bodybuilding prep. I'm, 5-6% body fat.
Mm-hmm.
And now that body weight came up relatively quickly because I was coming out of the diet and so forth. But I can tell you right now that being closer to 220 pounds versus closer to 230 pounds, that 10 pounds makes a huge difference.
Huge.
Um, the other thing I wanted to ask you about is footwear, because footwear has made a huge difference for me. I have 2 different pairs of running shoes now that I kind of alternate between, and I notice a massive difference between each one, and they're not that different of a shoe.
Yeah. So I'll just lay it out like this, because when it comes to like actual recommendations, the biggest thing that we found is like the fit, like the shoe fit and feel
Mm-hmm.
makes a big difference. And then the drop seems to make a big difference.
So you're talking like heel to toe drop?
Yeah, the heel to toe drop, and you'll see a wide variety. And this may not seem like a big deal, but some shoes on the high end, Nikes are usually like 10 millimeters. Some other brands are like 12, sometimes a little bit higher than that, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
as common. And then you've got like ultras, which are 0 or like 2 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think most shoes will fall somewhere in the range of like 6 to 8. Um, and what this does is people report differences at the number one, the Achilles, because if you have a 0 drop shoe,
Mm-hmm.
it will put the Achilles more into a stretched and a lengthened position when your whole foot is on the ground and you're in stance phase, which is whenever you're basically standing on one leg while running and your whole foot's on the ground. So
Mm-hmm.
now if you have been used to using shoes that have some drop and you go to an ultra, there's a period in which you need to acclimate to it,
Mhm.
because now you're loading that Achilles in a slightly, very slightly, but it is uh, a lower heel position, which is going to put your Achilles on stretch. So lots of reports of ultras and Achilles, probably people just doing too much. It always comes back to workload management.
Yeah.
But and then on the opposite side, too much heel, people will complain about knee issues, because
Mhm.
then it's when you're in stance, you have a tendency to for that shin to translate forward, and you get a more of a stretch on the patellar tendon. So
Yeah.
those are basically the two kind of like diverging thoughts on lower leg and like the effects that some of these different shoes have. The other parts of shoes that I will talk about are the overall stack height and the foam. So some people will like a more dense, thinner foam, smaller stack, which the stack is the actual just overall height of the shoe. Um, some people will prefer it be more springy, and these are probably going to be lighter,
Mhm.
more reactive people. And then something with a little bit bigger stack, more foam, more cushion. So maybe somebody that's a little bit bigger, less reactive, less responsive, but it doesn't put nearly as much need for the lower leg to create tension fast, because the shoe deforms and you have a longer contact on the ground. And so it lends more towards a little bit bigger, a little less reactive, a little slower running than with someone who's a little lighter, a little more reactive, would choose something with probably a little bit denser foam, smaller stack, more responsive shoe. So,
Yeah. So I echo that. And I mean, my experience level is also very, very low, but coming as a, 225-pound guy, I have a pair of Brooks Ghost Max 2 that it's a 6 millimeter drop, and it's a higher stack height shoe, but it's a stiffer foam. And I found that because I'm a little bit heavier, that stiffer foam um, acts more like a thinner foam. But it's also a much slower shoe than my New Balance Rebels
yeah,
that
it's a big
I
step.
definitely feel a lot faster, smaller stack, bit of a more aggressive rocker. Um, I feel like I can just run faster. And then what I've been doing for myself, because I'm coming from a situation where I literally only wear barefoot shoes when training, doing cardio, all that sort of stuff, always barefoot shoes. I do my rucks in ultras. So I have a pair of ultras that I do my rucks in, and then I do my faster runs in my New Balances, and then I do my longer runs in my Brooks. And I think having the rotation for a lot of people can be beneficial too. As long as, and I mean, this raises the barrier of entry to the sport. You don't need 3 pairs of shoes, but I'm still experimenting with things, and I think it's beneficial to figure out what works best for you. And also to give yourself a novel stimulus, so you're not getting any overwork in specific areas too. I think that's probably one of the benefits.
Yeah, yeah. Just having a rotation. This talks to like carbon fiber too, because people will use a carbon fiber plate shoe, just come too over reliant on it, which the shoe creates the stiffness. You don't create the stiffness.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have so many issues coming off of those shoes. People that abuse them because they are faster. Uh, but people that abuse those carbon fiber shoes and they come off them, and then they have foot, plantar fascia, all these issues because they're too reliant and too adapted to the shoe.
Yeah, it
So,
makes total sense. So how does this play into weight training? Because I tell you right now, my top end strength way down, but I'm not weak and I'm still getting stronger.
mm-hmm.
So where does weight training fit into this when you're talking about somebody who wants to be proficient at both strength training and running?
Yeah. So I will just list out some principles.
Yeah,
I
perfect.
think just a principled approach is best. And here are the principles: give your first fruits to what you really want to push. So if you're in a season where you're you feel like you're fit, or you just want to push strength or whatever, I'm always going to bias my training so that I am freshest when I'm doing my strength training. So whether that means, and this could mean a lot of things to a lot of people, this means I'm doing my run early in the morning and then
Mhm.
I'm going late at night to get my lift. And if it's a lower body lift, that run in the morning may be pretty easy or it may be low impact. And
Mhm.
so that I'm biasing my day towards being in the best possible position to get my lower body strength training to be really good. Um, so, and the opposite is true too. If I say I want to get my, run in the morning and it's going to be a hard run, then in the afternoon, I'll do my lower body lift, understanding that, putting them on the same day gives me another day of some easier training and then maybe another quality run that next day or the day after, but spacing as far away from the lower body lift as possible. So that's the first principle, is that I'm going to bias the timing and
Mhm.
the the type or the method of running. So typically I'm going to pair easier, more zone two runs, more of just something that is a maintenance with harder lower body lifting. Uh, and then I'm going to bias it in the way of um, the spacing. So I'm going to space out the lift and run as much as I can. And if I can't, then I'm going to do the thing I care about the most.
Right.
So that's going to be number one. Uh, Another principle that I think about all the time is going to be kind of like my calorie balance. In that, um, like we talked about with body fat, like
Mhm.
that's going to be a big thing for me. I already talked about this a lot, but we say fat doesn't fly. So if you really want to maximize both, like you said with powerlifting, like I want to be as lean as possible. Oh, my hamstring just cramped. Oh my gosh. Okay, right. Um, uh, but really, for both of these things, I have to maximize my body composition.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, it kind of sucks, like dieting down and getting lean, and it may hurt your strength a little bit, but honestly, it'll come back. Um, but making sure that calorically I am first get lean, but then be able to support, once I'm lean enough, be able to support my activity. But I think the first step is, and this is, like I said, a main principle, is that you have to get the body fat down, especially if your FFMI is in range and you're, around I would consider a 22, 23, 24 to be kind of that sweet spot for a hybrid athlete to be both good at strength training and conditioning. So, yeah, without doing anything else, getting the body comp right, getting it down is going to be a huge part of balancing both of those things. Um, and then, thirdly, from a training perspective, is that I want to have and this is especially true for running. I want to have a variety of paces that I'm running at so that the overall skill of running becomes very robust. So that means that I'm not going to just run at zone two. It also means that I'm not just going to run just at threshold. And I'm not going to just get hung up on maybe this thing that I'm predisposed to being good at. And some people are better at easier stuff. Some people, can buffer lactate really well just naturally. And they always tend up just hitting that middle portion of the spectrum a lot. But I want to have a variety. And this is especially important when I think about longitudinal development, is that over the years, I need to have exposure to very short, very intense running,
Right.
moderate, and really long. In the same way, I want to do the same for lifting. There should be times where lifting is very heavy and that I'm really pushing the neural side of things. But I also need to build enough muscle. going back to FFMI. I have to have muscle. And there's going to be times where I'll do speed work or something, or I'll do some lighter, really high rep sets. But it's just overall developing a healthy spectrum of ability in lifting and in running. And like I said, especially true for running is that I think people get really hung up and the pendulum of endurance training swings in one way or the other. Right now it's zone 2. If you remember around like 2010,
These are all intervals.
hit.
Yep.
It was all you need is hit. All you need is hit. If you do anything over a 20-minute continuous run, all of your type 2 fibers will become type 1 and you'll be very slow and you'll die. It's basically the message. And, it just wasn't true. And we know that now. But like the pendulum has swung all the way back in the direction of very, very long, very, very slow. And then people come to me and they're like, I'm not getting any faster. It's crazy. I read this book and it was like, just do zone 2 and it'll build this and that and run slow to run fast, And I'm like, okay, what are you doing in training? They're like, oh, I literally do 6 zone 2 runs a week. And I go, well, if you're trying to run at this pace and you're only running at this pace, you're not going to, I don't know where the disconnect is, but.
Well, that brings into question that graph that you posted on your Instagram the other day of, there is a almost an exponential decrease in performance as you increase duration.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So a power law distribution is how we can think of running. Is this just like this curve? It's kind of flat here on this x-axis, and then it quickly goes up and is almost flat on the y-axis. And so what this tells me is that there's a point at which I'm running so slow that it really doesn't matter if I run slower or not slower. I can kind of hold it forever. It's a sustainable pace, and the pace doesn't really change whether I'm running for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, and on. It basically becomes the same. Now, it's not quite true because you fatigue and you have some things downstream of your physiology that stop you for running continuously for 72 hours. But on the other end of the spectrum, you also have a point at which you can run basically as fast as you want, and there's not a whole lot of difference between the time you can hold it. Once you get past an 800 meter or 400 meter, if you look at those times, even the 100 meters, the difference between the 100 meter world record and the 400 meter world record, they're not that different. 9 and change for the 100 meters, and then 42 or 43 seconds, I think, for the 400 meters. And if you multiply the 100 meter by 4, it's about the same as the 400 meter, but it's a multiple 4. So you can see how if you were to multiply your slow running pace or your moderate running pace for times 4, it doesn't quite add up. I can't hold that for 4 times as long, or less than 4. But that's basically what it says to me, is that in the middle of that power curve is really where I want to spend most of my attention. Basically from 5 to 10 minutes or so time to exhaustion to 60 to 90 minutes time to exhaustion. And what this works out to be for most people is most of my running is going to be from about my mile pace to my half marathon 10-mile pace is really where we want to focus most of our efforts, and all the paces in between. And what this does is it creates, and this is not entirely true because some people at their marathon pace, it's really, really fast. So there's some caveats with that. But for the most part, an average trained runner, this is going to be true. And that most of the gains can be found by training within that spectrum. And so what we can do, and it's not an accident that a lot of the physiological turn points happen within that section of time. Right. At 5 to 10 minutes, some say 4 to 8, some say about 6 minutes. That is the typical velocity at VO2 max on average for anyone.
Interesting.
So that's the time in which that is the slowest actually pace that you reach VO2 max within the time trials that they usually would do. And I generally think that's true. Although some people say you can reach VO2 max if you just go hard enough at different paces. But most people, velocity of VO2 max is around 6 minutes. Okay, the next physiological turn point we really want to look at is ventilatory threshold 2. That's around 20 to 40 minutes. It's a little bit faster than your maximum lactate steady state or your lactate threshold, which is about at 40 to 60 minutes. The more trained you are in all of these variables, the longer the time.
Right.
So someone who is not very well trained, they may only be able to hold their maximum lactate steady states or their lactate threshold for 20 or 30 minutes. As you become more trained, you can hold that longer and longer and longer. That's the point at which blood lactate starts to pool in your blood. So you have that point at 40 to 60 minutes. The next is your first lactate threshold, or we can call it VT1 or ventilatory threshold 1. That point is going to be somewhere around an hour and a half to 3 hours. So for people who are very fit, 3-hour marathon or so, this is going to fall between VT1 or their first lactate threshold. Now, if you're really fast and you're doing a 2-hour marathon, obviously, it's way faster, and you're able to hold. It's probably closer to your threshold, honestly, for a 2-hour marathon. Their VT1 is probably a little bit further, and they can hold it for longer. But for most people, 1.5 hours to 3 hours or so for VT1. Mm-hmm. So you can see that anything beyond that time is like, and this is what zone 2 is. Zone 2 is literally everything beyond that. And so if you're spending all your time at zone 2, you're literally spending your time in a zone that
you can hold forever.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can go and you hold it for 3 hours, you hold it for 6, 12. For ultras, it might be important, but for the most part, in developing a robust profile of running, you have to run at time to exhaustions at an hour and a half or an hour and below to basically 5 to 10 minutes. And it's not a huge window of time. But there's a lot of paces within there. You can create 5 zones off of just a 50-minute time span, 60-minute time span, and be really, really successful at just kind of hitting these different work rates.
That sounds pretty complex, but like realistically, it's relatively simple. It's super simple.
The way I explain it to people like this, especially, you'll get this. Okay. So most running pace calculators, they will pick out an anchor and they'll calculate all paces off of it, which is nice, but there's errors. So for example, this is like taking your 5K, put it in, and it'll give you all the paces for every distance and every time. It's the same way of taking your 1RM, you put it in a calculator, and it gives you all of the weights that you can do for 2 reps, 3 reps, 4 reps, 5 reps, 6 reps, 7 reps, 8 reps, 9, 10, 20. And the further you get from that 1RM, the more error.
Yes.
Okay, so what this system does, if you base everything on your 5 to 10 minute, if you, for example, if I have 3 running points from somebody, I have their mile time, I have their 5K, and I have their 10 mile or something, or their 5 mile and their 10 mile. Mm-hmm. You can create a profile that's based off of those 3 times. And what this is similar to doing is like, if I have your back squat and I have your 1RM and I have your 5RM and I have your 10RM.
Yep.
And now I can base your 5RM off of your 5RM rep max. So I know it's not as popular, but some people will do, 90% 5RM, and you're doing sets of 5, but it's specific to your 5 rep max.
Right. So
it's a known variable. Whereas with the 1RM, we can base, we can say you can do 10 reps with this. You may not be able to. You may be able to do 8.
Well, and as you get more proficient, the percentage error increases like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. You could do, the weight or the range is wide. If you take that 10 RM and you actually try to do like a rep out, you could get 7, you could get 15,
Yeah.
you could get a huge. So that's what this system does. Is it actually it's kind of like a rep max, like a taking the rep maxes and the percentage of those rep maxes instead of basing everything off of one running variable. If I have 3 different parameters, I can map out the time to exhaustions at each of those much more accurately, and then base training off of that.
Yeah. I love that. Dude, this has been really, really inciting or insightful. Sorry, because I think number one, aerobic training is getting more popular. Hybrid athletics is getting more popular. It's a very nuanced topic for me. I think of everything in terms of trade offs, right? So, when I'm looking at my own journey, uh, I don't want to lose weight. I don't want to be small. I don't want to be sub 220. So that means that I'm going to have a massive trade off on the running side and have to work a lot harder to get better at that. But I just, as you were talking, I calculated my FFMI. I have a 28 FFMI,
Yeah,
right? Because my body fat percentage is so low and
muscle.
I'm over 225 pounds. So can I actually pull body fat off? Probably not.
Nope.
Can I pull my body weight down? Yeah, but I don't want to do that. So what do I have to do? Well, I actually have to bias my training a little bit more to a lot more to the aerobic side, which is what we've been doing, and do it for long enough. And I think that's the key here is that we need to put in the time required to actually become proficient at the thing that we're not proficient in. And that's going to bring into it a lot of the hardest things you've ever done. That's going to bring into it a lot of failures, right? I've had failures in our running so far, mostly due to like digestive issues, but
That's some rough days.
yeah, had some rough days, but it just is another opportunity to get better. And it's something that I think a lot of people are looking for these days, because I think hardship is something that people crave.
Yeah,
And I think fitness is the perfect avenue for that.
yeah, because it's so scalable.
Exactly.
Scale it so easy. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I can't run 2 miles. It's like,
So
well,
run one.
have you ever walked 2 miles? Let's start there. You
Yeah.
know, and then maybe that 2 miles, let's add in a minute of, some shuffling or something. Like it's so easy to scale. So easy to take something that you have done, or like it's just you're on the cusp of doing it, and then you just do that thing that is within your ability, and you're like, okay, now it's in my known world, and then it's like, what is just on the other side of my known world? What's in the unknown world that I can easily just go and grab and pull into my known world?
It's funny you say that, because one of the things that I noticed this week was there's a part of me that wants to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, like, I noticed it first on the ruck, where my pace was much faster than it was last week or last time I rucked. And I was like, I wonder if I could run. And so I didn't run, obviously, but I was like, okay, I'm on a downhill. I'm just going to let momentum take me, and I'm just going to pick up the pace a little bit. And then I was like, oh, that felt okay. I'm going to slow down a little bit, and then I'm going to try that again. And, that wasn't programmed for me, but now I'm starting to explore it. I would not have imagined,
Mm-hmm.
6 weeks, whenever we started 8 weeks ago or whatever, that I'd be running with 50 pounds on my back.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, I'm actually looking for those opportunities to make things a little bit harder or to push my capacity a little bit more. And I mean, you put guardrails in there with my heart rate, so I kind of have to adhere to that, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And I think people, when they find that limits can be broken,
Mm-hmm.
they become more excited to push those limits and break them again.
Yeah. I think of like a movie scene where like it's like, do I cut the red wire or the green wire? And like you go to cut it, and you start to like brace yourself, and you like cut, and then
Yeah.
like nothing blows up, and you're like, uh, okay, I think, yeah, like I can. Okay, now we can go. Like, you get past that point at which there's friction,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, like this is like I'm really exploring into the unknown. Like you never, rucked a ton, anything like that. Once you do it, now it's in your known world. It's
Mm-hmm.
known to you, and then you start to explore. Okay, what is in my nearby unknown world that I can go and grab?
Yeah, I love it, dude. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for sharing your time. Where can people find you?
Uh, Coach dot man, I don't even know my handle. Coach dot Cody dot Miller, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Hoopie Strength, hoopiestrength.com. I
Yep.
know their website. But yeah, the on Instagram, coach.cody.miller is the handle. And YouTube is Hoopie Strength as well. So mostly just if you HOOPIE, Hoopie Strength is what you would search to find all of our content.
Love it, dude. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, Paul.